to progressively develop. So these things you have to understand very minutely to be able to develop yourself, to be able to motivate the teachers to develop their own self, and for the students. Resilience, under any circumstance, you will never leave the situation. The captain of the ship does not leave when the ship is sinking. Correct? So that is resilience. Prioritization. There are at least 100 tasks that need to be completed in a PMSHRI mandate. So how will you prioritize what task to do what time? With which people? That is your leadership competency. Prioritization. Adaptability is not adjustment. Adaptability is, there is a crisis. Initially, I have to adjust to it, but then how do I make that crisis into my strength? That is important. So if I have a higher enrollment of CWSN children, how can I make that as my strength and not as my weakness? That should be your leadership competency. So how do you make all the crises, all the conflicts, all the weaknesses your strength? That is great adaptability, right? Being multi-skilled, having pedagogical competency, we will talk about it later. Digital fluency is very important in the context of PMSHRI now, not just literacy, but digital fluency, problem solving, innovation, decision making, so on. So the table is very easy. Do I have these competencies in me? What are the roadblocks that these competencies are not yet developed inside me? How must I cultivate them? How do I build my teachers? How do I motivate them to develop their competency, and what opportunities do I provide my students to develop these competencies, right? Imagine every student in your PMSHRI school is resilient, adaptable, multi-skilled, pedagogically sound, digitally fluent, great problem-solving skills. Your PMSHRI school will progress like anything, you know? So these competencies need to be built right from adults till students. And it again, I will give you a very small example, perfect for the occasion. Your own children, when they grow up, and suppose I meet them and I know you, oh, you look like your mother, you know, you talk like your father, this quality is like your mother, this quality is like your father. Similarly, in the school, if you want students to develop competencies, what is most important? The teachers and school leaders must exhibit those competencies themselves. You will see that in a school where school principal is digitally fluent, automatically children in that school will be digitally fluent, isn't it? So that is the connection between adult competencies and student competencies. If a school principal is very proactive, very innovative, you will see that there is a huge positive energy and everybody is charged up, right? So adult competencies are linked with student competencies. You cannot improve learning outcomes of students if everyone is quiet and calm and has no competency. Adults need to be very, very competent to be able to develop student competencies that will affect the learning outcomes. So that is the connection between leadership and learning, right? This is interesting research by Dr. Carol Dweck on mindset. This is a book which is Mindset. You can also brilliantly written. You can also buy it, purchase it from Amazon. Let me just see if I have it. It's there in the slide also. If you want to develop as a leader, you need to self-read a lot. So this is the book Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, who talks about fixed and growth mindset. the slide that is shown in your hard copy that has been given to you. Now, in leadership, the most important is developing positive mindsets. Everything gets done if the mindset is correct. Everything gets done. So how do you make the mindset of each teacher positive and growth mindset? So Dr. Carol Dike is talking about two mindsets. One is fixed mindset and the other is growth mindset. So fixed mindset is something where people are avoiding challenges. So you have to assess this in your teachers. Which teachers have fixed mindset? Which teachers have growth mindset? But you can assess only if you have a growth mindset first, right? They avoid challenges, obstacles. They give up easily. अरे मुझसे नहीं होगा, मैं नहीं कर पाऊंगा. I cannot do this. I cannot do this. I cannot do this. You know, that type of a mindset. Effort. I don't want to put in extra effort. I don't like feedback, you know. So how will you convert the fixed mindset of your teachers into growth mindset is your leadership capability in the PMSHRI school. Success of others. What does it say? They are threatened by the success of others, you know. So what will happen as a result? They may plateau early. So most of the teachers you will find they are stagnating over a period of time. Many teachers are doing perfectly well. They are progressing, developing, but there are few who are stagnating over a time. They have reached a plateau. Avoid that. First, assess whether you are having a growth mindset or not, and then see if the teachers or any student for that matter. There are many students, in fact, we have been traveling as NCSL to many schools in the country, especially in adolescent age. I will not be able to do it. A lot of negative emotion is there. A lot of negative emotion. I cannot do this. I don't have money. My parents are poor. This problem, that problem, you know. But even you, all of us have studied in government schools. We have also succeeded. If we also had that negative mindset, we would have not been sitting here, right? So how do you develop a positive growth mindset in children, in teachers, in principal? Look at the growth mindset, the green diagram. They accept and embrace challenges. In the face of setbacks, they are always making some effort. See effort as the path to mastery. Learn from criticism. And final lessons and inspiration in the success of others. They find inspiration in the success of others, and they, as a result, they grow, right? And they grow as with a higher sense of achievement. With a higher sense of achievement, they grow, right? So growth mindset is very important, and most of the researchers have said that it is not your IQ, but your persistence that makes you successful. And that helps you grow your personality and develop yourself as a teacher or as a student. If there is time, I will show you another video. So first, in this step, what you have to do first, assess yourself whether you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. Then talk to your teachers about this concept. You can always, these are all very low-cost books. Since you are resource persons, each one of you must have this book. That's just a suggestion, not mandatory. But what you can do in case you don't want to buy a book, YouTube पे बहुत सारा TED Talk है. So you can access the TED Talk of mindset. There will be people, authors who speak to you about these concepts. So that is easier. That is easier. So if you're preparing yourself as the resource person, as the master trainer for PMSHRI, you need to be a step higher. So listen to a lot of TED Talk on different, I can show you, share some books with you, right? So one book is, of course, Mindset, and the other book is Grit, G-R-I-T, Perseverance, Grit, by Angela Duckworth. I've shown that in Pedagogical also. So see, the slides are there. You can read it also after this. This is some school leadership defined by theory. Don't show theory before. In the beginning, it should only be writing your own definition of school leadership. This is only additional information, right? So school leadership is a process of exercising influence on self, others, and circumstances, providing direction, exercising influence, and so on. And we will come to these relevant models of this thing. I'll show you the grit video, right? This link is not in the PPT, but I will share it on the WhatsApp. Okay. No, this is not my video. I want to go to Google. YouTube. Okay. Just listen to her carefully, who talks about improving student learning outcomes and what is more important. Is it IQ or it is effort and persistence?
When I was 27 years old, I left a very demanding job in management consulting for a job that was even more demanding.
Sound is on.
Teaching. I went to teach 7th graders math in the New York City public schools. And like any teacher, I made quizzes and tests. I gave out homework assignments. When the work came back, I calculated grades. What struck me was that IQ was not the only difference between my best and my worst students. Some of my strongest performers did not have stratospheric IQ scores. Some of my smartest kids aren't doing so well. And that got me thinking, kinds of things you need to learn in 7th grade math, sure, they're hard. Ratios, decimals, the area of a parallelogram. But these concepts are not impossible. And I was firmly convinced that every one of my students could learn the material if they worked hard and long enough. For several more years of teaching, I came to the conclusion that what we need in education is a much better understanding of students and learning from a motivational perspective, from a psychological perspective. In education, the one thing we know how to measure best is IQ. But what if doing well in school and in life depends on much more than your ability to learn quickly and easily? So I left the classroom and I went to graduate school to become a psychologist. I started studying kids and adults in all kinds of super challenging settings. And in every study, my question was, who is successful here and why? My research team and I went to West Point Military Academy. We tried to predict which cadets would stay in military training and which would drop out. We went to the National Spelling Bee and tried to predict which children would advance farthest in competition. We studied rookie teachers working in really tough neighborhoods, asking which teachers are still going to be here in teaching by the end of the school year. And of those, who will be the most effective at improving learning outcomes for their students? We partnered with private companies asking which of these salespeople is going to keep their jobs and who's going to earn the most money. In all those very different contexts, one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. And it wasn't social intelligence, it wasn't good looks, physical health, and it wasn't IQ. It was grit. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. A few years ago, I started studying grit in the Chicago public schools. I asked thousands of high school juniors to take grit questionnaires, and then waited around more than a year to see who would graduate. Turns out that grittier kids were significantly more likely to graduate, even when I matched them on every characteristic I could measure. Things like family income, standardized achievement test scores, even how safe kids felt when they were at school. So it's not just at West Point or the National Spelling Bee that grit matters, it's also in school, especially for kids at risk for dropping out. To me, the most shocking thing about grit is how little we know, how little science knows about building it. Every day, parents and teachers ask me, how do I build grit in kids? What do I do to teach kids a solid work ethic? How do I keep them motivated for the long run? The honest answer is, I don't know. What I do know is that talent doesn't make you gritty. Our data show very clearly that there are many talented individuals who simply do not follow through on their commitments. In fact, in our data, grit is usually unrelated or even inversely related to measures of talent. So far, the best idea I've heard about building grit in kids is something called growth mindset. This is an idea developed at Stanford University by Carol Dweck, and it is the belief that the ability to learn is not fixed, that it can change with your effort. Dr. Dweck has shown that when kids read and learn about the brain and how it changes and grows in response to challenge, they're much more likely to persevere when they fail because they don't believe that failure is a permanent condition. So growth mindset is a great idea for building grit, but we need more. And that's where I'm going to end my remarks because that's where we are. That's the work that stands before us. We need to take our best ideas, our strongest intuitions, and we need to test them. We need to measure whether we've been successful, and we have to be willing to fail, to be wrong, to start over again with lessons learned. In other words, we need to be gritty about getting our kids grittier. Thank you.
So it's very now really you can understand this, I don't need to really explain this, and you can go over this video 100 times, to be able to understand the fact that, children who become disheartened, demotivated because they are not able to perform, you need to instill in them this idea of grit, perseverance, and then say that intelligence is not fixed. It can be changed. It can be grown. See, what you are right now, you were not the same personality 10 years back. Were you? Huh? Did you have the same set of qualities 10 years back today? Why? You have grown. You have added more feathers to your personality, isn't it? Because you had a growth mindset. So every child must not learn to be fearful of failure, but learn that as a challenge to grow further. And that is very important in terms of when we're talking about how leadership is impacting student learning. See, you are a PMSHRI school principal. I mean, life is good. Why do you want to become a leader? Tell me. Life is good. Why do you want to become a leader? You can ask this question right at the beginning of the session also. Why do you want to become a leader? Tell me. To change, to grow.
You don't want to sit as a passive.
You don't want to be passive. You want to be active, proactive. So leadership has a goal, isn't it? You want to change. You want to bring about a positive change. You don't want to be passive. You want to be active, proactive. You want to really impact positively the learning levels of your students, the culture of the learning culture of the school, isn't it? You want to positively impact, and that is why you want to become a leader. So leadership with a purpose. You're having leadership with a purpose, right? Now, we come to this, since this video I showed to you, because this was linking leadership with student learning, because leadership में ये 3-4 words बहुत critical हैं: development, vision, motivation, mindset. This will govern literally every aspect of implementation of your school. If you do not have strong personalities, the implementation is not possible, even if you learn hundreds of action plans. Isn't it true? So everybody has to be passionate, to be motivated, positive growth mindset, proactive, and with a purpose. That must be the role of a leader. Now we come here, move to the next part and the last part of my discussion on leadership with you, where we are sharing some models on leadership for learning, how leadership is impacting learning. You can read these definitions. They are easy. Leadership for learning says, that every stakeholder is a leader. Every stakeholder is a learner. Normally, when I ask question, if I'm asking you a question, who learns in a school? Tell me.
Everyone.
Normally, when you ask in a normal school, the school is for the student learning. Students learn in the school. Really? No. Yes. A school leader also learns. A teacher also learns. It's not, the school is not only for student. Sorry. The school में हर व्यक्ति जो है वो सीख रहा है. हर व्यक्ति सीख रहा है. ये okay with one or some words in Hindi, na? Okay. हर व्यक्ति सीख रहा है. See, I am from UP, but I would love to learn Telugu someday. And because I work with Andhra very closely, we have done a lot of programs, and even Telangana with the SCRT. So hopefully I'll do that. Instructional leadership again is talking about how teaching leadership, how leader creates a proper positive learning culture for teaching learning. And we come to pedagogical leadership. Why I'm highlighting pedagogical leadership? Because as I told you, it is there in para 5 in NEP 2020. Right? That a PMSHRI school principal or a school leader needs to be a pedagogical leader. The pedagogical leader ka kya matlab hai? Normally we say that, oh, administration is the job of the leader, but academic is the job of the teacher. Somebody said that in the beginning of the session. No, academic leadership is also a school leader's job as much as is administration and management and overall leadership. So pedagogical leadership, how do we define that? If you ask many of the elementary school principals, even head teachers, if I ask them, do you know what chapter 3 is in mathematics textbook in class 7th? People will not know. Let me tell you, let us be also self-critical. A leader is expected to improve the learning outcomes of all the students in all the classes. But do we really know which textbooks are running, what is the content, the chapters, the concepts at each level? You need to know that as a principal. And how many of you actually take classes? Honestly. Great, good, good, good. There are many parts in the country where principals have stopped taking classes. You know that, isn't it? Why? Because that's teacher's job. My job is scholarship, disbursement.
Not like that.
Huh?
Not like that.
Not like you, I mean, not in your case, but there are many, underdeveloped states where this feature is there. It is true. That is why they're underdeveloped, right? So as a principal, I need to have very good understanding of pedagogies and content across all school grades and all subjects. That is what pedagogical leadership is. It is essentially based on informing teacher practice and reflection. PL demonstrates credible knowledge of learning and teaching in conjunction with knowledge of processes of improving school-wide learning. The school head leads self and teachers as a knower and practitioner of pedagogical processes that build student competencies. So if you want to supervise the improvement in learning outcomes, you need to be very sure of what teachers are transacting, which subjects they are transacting, how they are transacting. That is the scope of pedagogy. We all know what pedagogy is. We know the concept of pedagogy in B.Ed and M.Ed. We have been taught. And as teachers, you must have practiced different pedagogies. So here, if you are setting the vision as a pedagogical leader for your school, you need to lead the pedagogical processes, right? I will just not bore you further. I will just explain you these two tables that have been given to you as a gist. a report by UNESCO in 2021, The Futures of Education. You can write that as your reference. 3 references I'm giving you. One is mindset. The other is grit. And the third is the UNESCO 2021 resource book on the futures of education. Right? In that, there is chapter 3 on pedagogies. So this table has been, for your convenience, has been extracted from the 2021 UNESCO handbook on what generic pedagogies are. See, in your school, maths is being led by the mathematics teacher, language by the language teachers, science by the science teachers. Now, what is the role of a school principal? A school principal has to see whether generic pedagogies are being implemented in the school or not. And are these pedagogies contributing to the outcomes, the competencies of students, right? So let us go here. First is fostering participation. So when you are going for rounds in the school, supervision in the school, in different classrooms, you have to notice whether teachers are using processes for the pedagogy of participation. These are generic pedagogies. They are not subject specific, because subject specific teachers are taking care of. As a pedagogical leader of the PMSHRI school, what are the processes? Open discussion, questioning, developing connection between concepts and subjects, encouraging student voice, students as creators of content, encouraging inquiry-based group learning. These are certain processes. If the teachers are doing these processes in the framework of participation, then these kind of competencies are gained by students: confidence, articulation, autonomy to create, metacognition. Confidence is a competency. How is confidence a competency? Again, knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values. Tell me, how is a confidence a competency? No.
If we know about one
Yes.
thing,
First
Here-
knowledge. Yes. First knowledge. If you, it does come. It is all 4. We say, okay, I think I need to give very simple examples. You can note down my examples, otherwise people will not understand. Tell me if honesty is a competency. How is honesty a competency? Tell me. You think honesty is a value? Many of us think. 90% think honesty is a value. No, honesty is a competency. Prove it to me. First stage, knowledge. So as a child, who teaches you what is honesty? Who teaches you?
Our elders,
language teachers,
our elders.
Absolutely.
Grandparents.
Your grandparents, your parents, your community, your nana, nani, dada, dadi, all the relatives. What is right, what is wrong? The word honesty is introduced to you by the language teacher. That I agree with you. Okay. So you are gaining knowledge. Then the child does a few things which are dishonest, and then the teachers correct, and then their practices become honest. So over the years, you are practicing this as a skill, right? Then if you have practiced it enough, it will become part of your attitude. And then over a long period of time, it will become your value. So if you say that honesty is a value, no, honesty is a competency. Confidence is a competency. If you do not have enough knowledge, and if you haven't practiced that knowledge through communication, you will not be able to stand on the podium and speak. Confidence comes from knowledge, skills, attitudes, and value. And then when I talk to girls who are underconfident, I will say, look at me. This is how I have become today. So learn from me. Just as an example. And then, you practice it as a value. A lot of people say, is sleeping a competency? Anything under the sun is a competency, let me tell you. You can do this exercise the next 10 days. Take any word and convert that into a competency. Tell me how sleeping is how many of you have problem in sleeping in the night? Little bit. There are people, no? Next 10 days, work on this as a competency. How? Tell me. How is sleeping a competency? It is an art to sleep, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I know many of you have not raised your hands, but it is a problem that everybody is facing. Don't tell me. I also face the same thing. Sometimes. Right? How is sleeping a competency? Tell me. Knowledge?
First of all, we should know that sleeping is very important for our health.
Yes. That is knowledge.
And we should
Yes.
understand that.
Yes.
And then we should fix some timings for that, and we should practice.
No, you're running fast. You're running fast, madam. Then what will you do? You will go to YouTube.
Yeah.
How to sleep early. You're running fast. How to sleep early. You will gain some knowledge. You will gain tactics, strategies. What do I do? How do I eat? Should I not eat dinner? Just have milk. So many multiple strategies. You will first know how, the knowledge. Then slowly you will start practicing it. And then it becomes an attitude and a value. This does not happen if you're having some disease, but everybody is healthy. So that now if you look at army, sleeping is a technique that is taught to army jawans. Because they are working in extreme stressful conditions, high crisis circumstances. If they're not able to sleep quickly, you must have read articles that how they are taught how to sleep within 5 minutes. Have you heard of this? Yes, you must search on this internet. Across the world, this is a competency that is also a competency. In high stressful situations such as this, in the battleground, how do you sleep within 5 minutes? And then how do you get up? So it's a technique. Everything, anything under the sun is a competency. You understood it? I gave you very small examples, communication, problem solving. These are big, big things. But even small things are competencies. How? I told you, right? So this is important. Confidence is a competency. Articulation, to be able to speak and be meaningful, not just speak, but have meaningful conversation. Autonomy to create. Metacognition is a big word. You can understand it very simply in terms of how do you build up on your existing knowledge? How do you reflect on what you know and how do you build that up? Personalized learning. You have to see in the school whether the teachers are using this pedagogy in a generic way. Is every individual student getting the opportunity to personalize the learning? Fear-free expression, dialogue with the teacher, learner-driven. Or if all of this is happening in the classrooms, be assured that these competencies will definitely develop in your students. Sense of wonder, curiosity, autonomy to learn, all that. Next. 3, project and problem-based pedagogy. Is every teacher across all subjects trying to do this pedagogical intervention or not? Problem posing, project outcomes, and these competencies will develop questioning, critique, critical thinking, reasoning, learner investigation, autonomy to design, presentation skills. ये सब भी competency में आता है. Making a Microsoft Office presentation is also a competency, right? Collaboration and communication हो रहा है schools में कि नहीं हो रहा है classrooms में. E-drafting, critique, exhibition. Engage and motivate learners. Cultivate creativity and innovation. These generic pedagogies must be functional in your school, and that is your responsibility across any subject, any class, any grade, because they will lead to competency development of students. And this has everything to do with the subject also. This is not independent of the subject. Subject teaching is happening, but how do you enhance the subject teaching further? Is pedagogical interventions, generic pedagogies, right? So I might be an excellent mathematics teacher. I do great formula calculations on the board. But if I don't apply it as skill, the students will not understand that concept fully because it has no application. So example, environmental science. If you're talking about the teacher is giving content, understanding, knowledge on how do you preserve plants, how do you grow more plants, preserve plants, pollution, any of those concepts, then the teacher gives the project where the children practice it. they plant the trees, they water the trees, they make fertilizers, so on and so forth. And then the attitude gets developed that, I have to be environmental friendly. And then later on, it becomes into the child's value system that, yes, I am environmental friendly. I just recalled one example of my colleague. They are non-vegetarian eaters, and the daughter, she started studying in the school, and as she grew up, and she said, no, I cannot have. I want to be purely vegetarian, and the parents were like sad that where will you get this nutrition from, and so on and so forth. But what happened? The attitude formation happened in terms of plant-based diet of the child. So children develop those attitudes and values. This is just an example. That must be happening at many times in many ways. So you have to, as a pedagogical leader, you have to see that such pedagogical interventions are taking place in your school. Only then these competencies will develop. And let me tell you, most of the schools, when we travel, we find that children are scared to speak. They're scared to share. They're scared to come up. Most of them. I'm sure in your school, children are like bubbly and they're all the time, they want to show something. But in most of the schools, so they are lacking competencies of expression, of voice, of articulation, of communication. And two things that I want to share here is that I'm sure, I don't think anyone has really told you about this, but since most of the PMSHRI schools are senior secondary school, that means you have class 12th. You also have to see that every child who passes class 12th is either entering into the higher education space or becoming employable. That is also the responsibility of a PMSHRI school principal. Your responsibility does not end with the school boundary in class 12th. If you remember, 40 years back, the focus of India's education policy was more on improving enrollment, access, reducing dropout. Then with Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan and Samagra Shiksha, it was about quality education. How do you improve quality education? How do you improve learning outcomes? Today it is, how do you access employability? That is how this has shifted. The policy perspective has shifted. How do you become employable? Every child, NEP says, must have at least one skill, very, very strong skill. So whatever happens, the child is able to do entrepreneurship, if not higher education. So access to employability, access to higher education. In fact, this small exercise, you can do it at your own end. You all must be having alumni cells with students. Just do a little bit of analysis. Which higher education colleges, universities your students are going to? Which ITI, polytechnics, skill-based centers, sector skill councils they're going to? Is every child or any child who has passed class 12 is sitting at home? This analysis also you must do, because ultimately the entire year of effort will become fruitless if they do not go ahead and get into the higher education or the employable market. So access for employability is something that PMSHRI school principal also needs to look at. Very important. And gone are the days when we used to say that, oh, this child is not very good academically, isko vocational mein dal do. Kehte the na? Abhi bhi kehte. Isn't it? Oh, today's vocational you cannot do if you are academically weak, let me tell you. Artificial intelligence, mechatronics, you name it. So many children are doing drone technology, this computer application, ITS, ye sab. You cannot do this if you are academically weak. You can be great businessman, but if you can't write a proper letter, which is a communication competency, your business will fail. If you do not have people skills, in the school, your people skills have not got developed, whatever business you do, it will fail. So today's world, academics and vocation are going hand by hand. You cannot excel in skills and vocational if you are not academically sound. So there is no distinction now. It is all one. You have to be academically strong as well as perform well in vocation. Vocational now in today's 2024 in India is not just carpentry, let me tell you. It is not just beauty wellness. It is much, much more. And all that requires very good academic background. So keep these two things in mind. What do you do after class 12th? And number two, how academics and vocational are linked. So these are the pedagogies. And that is how it is. So I have explained to you what leadership is, a video on what leadership is, initiation, how do you define leadership, leadership की कुछ theory बताई आप लोगों को मैंने, motivation, vision, mindsets. Then I linked leadership with student learning, grit, perseverance, and then how you can become a pedagogical leader. How can you see in your supervision that general pedagogies are being implemented, and what outcomes, what competencies they will lead to in students. So this entire thing is on leadership development for PMSHRI school principals. Okay, thank you very much. We have a session with sir. Thank you. Test.
Okay.
Huh?